Hello students, I welcome you to the third session of our July month of our monthly current affairs series, right? So in this the third session, every session and every month with the third session we discuss international affairs. Okay. So before starting that, I would just like to remind you that we are also parallelly going through our impetus series. We restarted our rejuvenated our impetus series. After Tiger Reserve series, we hit a lag. So again, we started with the literatures of the past, and the first video is out on the YouTube channel, and also the second one, that is series 3, will be on the modern history personalities, right? And after that also we'll be starting our previous year question series. Okay. So please keep checking all those series because they all contain really important information. Especially currently we are in the prelims mode, so we'll be covering every information from the prelims perspective, right? Okay, so let's start the session. And the international affair, again we do the restructuring, right? So there will be some country specific news, then some international institutions we'll cover today, summits and initiative, and finally some bilateral things we'll cover. Okay, starting with the country specific news. The first thing is National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, and its amendment. So it's it's from United States of America. The question can come that itself, National Defense Authorization Act, is in the context of which country? First question. Then they can ask about the amendment and the importance to India. So this act amendment sought to place India on par with the US NATO allies by amending the Arms Export Control Act. So US NATO allies, NATO major non-NATO ally means having the status of getting high-end technology, basically, right? The US law that governs the sale of the high-end defense equipment to the other countries, right? We do not want to get into NATO, but we want the perks that the NATO countries get, something like that. Okay, so in the Rajya Sabha, a question was there, so that becomes more relevant. So the question has been asked to the Foreign Ministry that details of the amendment proposed on the proposed for the NDMA by the Congressman Brad Sherman. So the question can come: the Sherman Amendment is been used, and this belongs to uh, this belongs to which country, or in which context this been? So the different four options can be there, and the good question can be formed out of it, right? So US Senator passes the legislative, US Senate passes the legislative provision to give India NATO-like status, or NATO ally-like status. Okay, so National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, for okay, India NATO ally, similar to non-NATO. Okay, so US Congressman supports ND amendment to include India in the NATO plus 5 countries. So 5 countries which are not in NATO but have the same status, right? We'll discuss those 5 countries are. You can get from the logic itself which should be those 5 countries. Okay, so which could be, just let's try to figure out, right? So which countries would be there? First will be Japan, right? Quad, you can remember Quad, from Quad, Japan, Australia, then any other country? India is there. India, NATO plus 5, India will be there. Then South Korea, South Korea can be there, right? So which is the fifth country? This is New Zealand. Okay, this is, sorry, Israel. Okay, so NATO plus 5 country, include India and NATO plus 5 countries. So India will be the sixth country. Okay, so Australia, then New Zealand, and then finally the one more country, Israel. How can we forget Israel, right? So these are the NATO plus 5 country. Okay, so India pushes to add, US pushes to add India into NATO plus 5 countries. That's it. Next is foreign military sales program, related to that only. So this sales program is of the USA. This particular gentleman is Brad Sherman, who has um, seek the amendment into NDMA to make India more favorable to this export of the this high defense equipments, right? Through this program, US sells arms abroad, and procedure is less complicated if the purchaser is NATO ally or Japan of these countries. These countries are NATO plus 5. So procedure is easy if these countries are there. So this amendment in the amendment is there, sought to add India to the list of non-NATO allies listed above, so that the export of the these weapons, this military sales, becomes easy to India as well. procedural delay should not be there, right? Next is, the third is F-35 program, Joint Strike Fighter program. So this Joint Strike Fighter program is described as the armed deal of the century. And this program is an international weapon contract between US and its allies. So US forms this contract with the allies, and allies take the weapon from the US basically. It aimed at developing the fifth generation fighter jet. Its signatory to the deal contribute capital for the research and development of the F-35 jets. US has recently terminated, now that was in the news, US has recently terminated Turkey's participation in the F-35 jet program in response to Turkey's purchase of S-400 missiles defense system. Remember S-400 defense missile system? S-400 was in the news because of the Russia's S-400 missile system. Last time we covered Katska, remember? So India was also facing the problem of the sanctions from US, because India has also procured this S-400. Now, with respect to Turkey, and this US has said that these two things cannot go simultaneously. On the one hand, we are going F-35, and on the other hand, you are procuring S-400 from Russia. No, these two things cannot go simultaneously. So they have said that no, Turkey will not be allowed to have this F-35 if they are going ahead with this S-400. Easy, right? Next is Instex says. So what is this? The question can itself come in the IR. You see, if you have seen IR previous question comes really very shallow level. This term is been the news. Why? That's it. So you just need to know in the IR, mains is different from pre, especially in IR. They ask you very shallow question. You just need to have a lot of horizontal coverage for international relationship in the prelims point of view. So it's a special purpose vehicle. This particular thing is a special purpose vehicle aimed at facilitating the legitimate trade between the European economic operators and Iran, because Iran is facing sanctions from the US. Okay, Iran is facing sanctions from the US because of the JCPOA. Okay, so Iran, France, Germany, and United Kingdom announced the creation of Instex as instrument for supporting the trade exchange. Okay. It will function as a non-dollar euro dominated clearing house. This particular thing, it will function as a non-dollar euro denominated clearing house. It would be based in France with a German banker heading it and a UK head supervisory board. Not important, but more important thing is which three countries have started this. So France, Germany, and United Kingdom. Okay, no Italy and all this, remember. Also recently 6 more countries have joined in the barter system. So 6 countries are, not remember, but still Belgium, Denmark, Finland, Netherlands, Norway, and Sweden. So you can remember those all those Scandinavian countries. Four is there, right? Norway, Sweden, Finland, right? And then Belgium, Denmark, and Netherlands, up there only, very north of the Europe. Next is then the news is New Southern Policy. The New Southern Policy is of the South Korea, right? So New Southern Policy, vision, strategies, and forward. So it will complement by South Korea to step up engagement with India and the ASEAN countries. New Southern Policy, remember South Korea's location is here, right? So Southern here ASEAN is here, and then here is India. So their Southern Policy Act here. So with respect to India, what will be complementary policy? Complementary policy will be Act East policy, right? Now currently the news has been from Act East to Act Indo-Pacific. Now the new term has been coined, so keep in mind that Act East, Act Indo-Pacific, Look East, everything is almost the same. Okay. Next is India's aligned policy for the Southeast. You can see Modi's Act East policy and Moon's a New Southern policy. It will be really comprehensive one and all this, right? Convergence of the policies. Next is really interesting, that is DIEM 25. So it is a Democracy in Europe Movement 25. Okay, Democracy in Europe Movement 25. So it arose after debt crisis in the Greece has resulted in the wide-ranging structural adjustment program imposed upon Greece by the European Commission, Europe Central Bank. Okay, so this is a result of the, because in the Greece there was a debt crisis that was it has its own history. It was a current affair 3 to 4 years back. So the debt crisis, when the Greece hit, the European Commission and the European Central Bank imposed a lot of sanctions or restrictions on the Greece. Then Greece demanded this is the Greece finance minister, Greece foreign finance minister, really good TED talk. If you go on the Google and talk about the TED talk of this guy, really good TED talk. It talks really sense. So he decided that address the ocean during the launch of the official launch of democracy in Europe movement. So he said that we need to reform this European structures, these European democratic structure. He said that these do not represent the proper democracy. We need reforms there. So just to highlight, so this democracy in Europe movement, it's a pan-European political movement launched in this by former Greek finance minister. So what they're saying is the movement aims to reform the European Union existing institutions to create a full-fledged democracy with sovereign parliament respecting the national self-determination. If a nation wants to spend the European government, European bank up to a certain limit, it is fine, but not to the limit of the not to the limit that it devalues the sovereignty of the country and sharing power with the national parliament, regional assemblies, municipal council in order to replace the Brussels bureaucracy. It is said that the Brussels bureaucracy is dominating, and the real democracy is not in the European Union. In fact, one of the problem European Union is facing is lack of democracy. Everything is not dealt by the specialist, and the elected leaders have very little say in the how the European Union is working. Okay. Next is Africa Trade Union, African Continent Free Trade Agreement, FCTA. Okay, African Continent Free Trade Agreement. Okay, this agreement is for both goods and services. It was signed at the 12th summit of African Union. So project would create an African common market of 1.2 billion people. Okay, and it would be the world's largest FTA. You know the difference between common market, custom market? So go on the economics static and revise that. Difference between common market, then custom market, and then like a EU from till EU, from PTA to journey till EU, right? So there is a 4-step journey, you have to see that. Next is this is African leaders set to sign the landmark trade deal at EU summit. From the main's perspective, it becomes relevant that um, how this African trade agreement is going to affect India. In fact, it's going to open up more opportunities. India already has around $70 billion of the trade with the African Union, and this particular FTA is going to like it's going to create some of the negative impact, but overall it is being seen as a creating a positive impact on the Indian trade with the AU. Okay. Okay, accelerating African trade and boosting Africa's trading position in the global market by strengthening Africa's common voice. If you see, the point is Africa, if it speaks in common voice, it will be a really powerful group, because it is said that in the future generations belongs to Asia and Africa. And in fact, in the Asia is also plateauing, then the Africa will be the global hub for manufacturing, global hub for employment creation, global hub for growth in the coming future. So this will be in a will be a way towards this this creating realizing the African potential. We'll also see today Agenda 2063. So we'll see how it is related to that. Next is Dogon ethnic group. Now remember, the question can come because we have seen in the last time how the UPSC is asked question. Oromia from Ethiopia, something like that, right? So Dogon ethnic group. This Dogon ethnic group is basically in the Mali. There's a country named Mali, earlier French colony. In Mali, at least 100 people were killed by the gunmen in the overnight attack in some district, right? Village is inhabited by Dogon ethnic group. The clash between Dogon hunters and semi-nomadic Fulani. So remember two things: Dogon versus Fulani. Just like we see in the Yemen civil war, that is Houthis versus Hadis. Similar, like are frequent. That's not a civil war, but two communities are fighting. Are frequent since Islamic uprising in this 2012. Okay, so this particular Dogon also has accused Fulani of ties to the terror group. Fulanis claim that Mali's military has armed the hunters to attack them. So acquisition, counter acquisition. From the police perspective, it is important that Dogon or Fulani comes. So remember, it's from the Mali in the Africa, right? So something about Mali. So Mali is a landlocked country in West Africa. It shares land border with 7 countries. If you are geography buff, so take it up and identify the 7 countries: Algeria, Burkina Faso, Niger, Guyana, Mauritania, Senegal. Capital is Bakamo. This is the capital, not very clear diagram, but Bakamo. Okay, the largest river in the Mali is Niger and the Senegal river you can see, right? So they are saying that it is the lifeline of Mali. So this is the Dogon area in the Mali. Okay, Bakamo being the capital, right? Next is Agenda 2063. I was talking about this Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, right? So it's an African Union's pledge to itself. The question can come: Agenda 2063 in the news. Why, right? So it's an African Union's saying the Africa we want. Okay, the structure of Agenda 2063, it's a bit means relevant, but still let's try to decode. So what they really want: a strong and influential global player, right? So they want themselves, because they, as I told you, the future belongs to them. So they want to be a strong and the influential global player and the partner. Next, they want development to be people driven, not the top bottom strategy, like top bottom, rather bottom top. Next, good governance, democracy, human rights, justice, and rule of law. In fact, Africa has seen a lot of civil wars, strife, destruction of the human resource, mineral resource. They have been seen, they have faced the wrath of the neocolonialism the most, proxies of the Cold War. So many stories, right? Prosperous Africa, okay? High standard of living, quality, environmental sustainability, climate resilience, inclusive economic growth, political unity and integrated continent, politically united Africa, economically integrated, peaceful and secure Africa, security, because they face a lot of problem of the terrorism, be it Niger's Burkina, for that, be it Nigeria, Boko Haram, or be it Al-Shabaab in the Kenya region, or not Kenya, not Somalia region, that Al-Shabaab, right? Al-Shabaab. Okay, then strong cultural identities and the values. So national culture are recognized and respected. Sorry. Okay, so consultative act, African Union vision, and all these things, right? So this is the Agenda 2063. So we have seen the country specific news. This is going to be relatively short session, because as compared to the previous international affairs session, right? Now we're going to see international institutions. Now the first institution we're going to see is very easy, right? WWF, World Wildlife Fund for Nature, this small pretty panda. Okay, so international non-governmental organization founded in 1961. Important thing is headquartered at Switzerland, Gland. Aim wilderness preservation and the reduction of the human impact on the environment. World's largest conservation organization. Now we are just covering the international institution, but I'm telling you, it will not be important. What important will be the efforts taken by WWF, different efforts, especially the efforts taken with respect to India, and also some of the steps have been taken WWF plus IUCN, right? So prepare everything from this perspective, especially for the organization that are related to the environment, WWF, IUCN, CITES, and all these things, right? Okay, so World Wildlife Fund for Nature, international government organization in the Gland and Switzerland in the headquarter. Next is Global Footprints Network. This organization itself is important. Why? They can ask you, like they have already asked Doctor Without Borders or something. They have asked too many international organizations. So Global Footprint is an international non-profit organization founded in 2003 to enable a sustainable future where all people have a opportunity to thrive with the means of one planet. Okay, Global Footprint Network. So remember, footprint is not with respect to the traveler or tourism. They can confuse you with that. Okay, so international founded 2003 to enable sustainable future where all people have a opportunity to thrive within the means of one planet. Next is ICJ. We have already covered ICJ in the governance series. In the governance lecture, ICJ we have covered, just reiterating it. So principal judicial organ of UN established in 1945. Two cases are entertained. We remember that: contentious cases, legal disputes, and also the request by the United Nations organization. No jurisdiction to deal with the people and organization. Okay, comprises of the just we have already done that in the governance portion. Just reiterating the facts. India is the founding member of ICJ. Headquarter is in the Peace Palace of the Hague. One more organization which has the headquarter in Hague, we have discussed in the governance, that is ICC, International Criminal Court. India is part of ICC? Answer is no. ICC is associated with Rome Statute, founded in 2002. Does ICJ takes individual request, application of individual NGO? Answer is no. Okay. So, India wants to empowerment of ICJ. India has said the Security Council needs to take more frequent recourse to the ICJ to take the to make more standardized judgment rather than the judgment based upon the discretion, especially of the from the P5, right? Next is International Law Commission. So International Law Commission, body of expert tasked with promotion of the development and codification of the international law. Okay, so it's a body. It actually is an ICC versus ICJ versus this ILC. I just need to know the lateral differences. Body of expert tasked with promoting development and codification of international law, established in 1948 by UNGA, United Nations General Assembly. Okay, composed of 34 individuals elected every 5 years by UNGA for their recognized competence and qualification in the international law. So basically, this body takes care of the codification and the development of international law. Especially currently, it's working on the crime against humanity. It's like genocide, like that. Now there, India and this ILC are facing some of the problems because India has not codified the laws like torture legislation, right? India also have currently legislation related to the preventive detention. So sometimes it comes in conflict between these two, and that is why sometimes it is in the news itself, right? And if the question comes, you have to, this much information itself is required. Okay, 34 individuals elected every 5 years by UNGA for their recognized competence and qualification in the international law. In 2016, a one person from India has got into this particular organization, but it was so before that, so I have not included that. So ILC holds annual session at the United Nations office in Geneva to discuss and debate various topics of international law to develop or codify international legal practice principles accordingly. Okay. So ILC holds annual sessions. Annually they meet and they discuss and debate various topics in the international law and they codify the principles accordingly. Next is, as I telling you, ICC, that is International Criminal Court. So it's a permanent treaty-based organization. Its jurisdiction to prosecute individual for the crime against humanity, genocide, crime against international crimes like genocide, crime against humanity, war crimes, crime of aggression. Established in 2002 and governed by the Rome Statute. Okay, its territorial jurisdiction over the nations that are party to the Rome Statute have accepted the court's jurisdiction. It has an independent judicial body distinct from UN. Remember, it is distinct from UN, right? It works in cooperation with UN, reports annually to UNG and also hear cases by UNSC. However, it is independent judicial body. Okay, India is not a member of ICC, neither signed, neither ratified, because India believe it will come in the but India believes that it will impact India's sovereignty. Okay, so if you go on the Google, this man, I was actually watching the proceedings when this happened. So this man, um, Bosnian massacre, this person was involved, and when the verdict came of ICC that he is convicted, he drank poison right there. It was really, if you go on the YouTube, just watch the video. It's really different, like horrifying. Next is UNSC, United Nations Security Council, right? India's candidature for non-permanent seat, it's in the news basically. India's candidature for non-permanent seat in the UNSC Council endorsed unanimously by Asia Pacific Group, which comprises of 55 countries, including the Pakistan. So Pakistan also said, okay, fine, India can have this particular non-permanent seat. Endorsement which India has a clean slate candidature, that is no other contestant from the group. So India is fighting alone, and there is no contestant among the groups to become a partner, to become a non-permanent member of UNSC. For elections that held every 5 for the election that held for every 5 permanent members next year from 2022. So elections are happening. So 5 per not permanent member. Now talk about the overall UNSC. So overall there are 15 seats, right? 5 seats are P5 and then 10 are non-permanent members. Among the non-permanent members, election happens of 5 seats, just like Rajya Sabha. So once election of these 5 happens, then they go out, then they go out, something like that. Okay. Okay. So permanent member, everybody knows that they have a veto right. China, France, Russia, US and UK. Non-permanent member, 2-year term. They have a 2-year term. So every year election happens, right? Every year happens for these 5, then next year these 5, then this 5. The question that can be asked is this: from how, because they will ask a tough question only. Now this serious, non-serious question have been enough from the UN. Now they'll ask a tough question. So tough question will come from the designation of the next 10 seats. Okay. So the question, they can also ask the question that all the 10 seats election happens simultaneously. The answer is no. 5 seats at a time, then next year 5 seats. Okay. So Africa, 3 out of the 10 Africa, there should be 3 of Africa. Okay. Then there should be 2 from Asia. So 5 from Asia and Africa. Then 2 from Latin America, 2 from Western Europe and others, and 1 from the Eastern Europe. Right. Okay. So United Security Council is the primary responsibility, has the primary responsibility within the UN of maintaining the international peace and security. It is the only United Nations organ that has a power to make decision that state member are obliged to implement. That member states are obliged to implement. So India has been non-permanent member for many times. In fact, 8 times before we have been non-permanent members. Not important to remember. Okay. Just remember that India has been a non-permanent member. That's all. Now, non-permanent members election each year elects each year, right? So this question I told you, this can get 5 member out of the 10 for a 2-term member. Okay. We have seen how it is distributed. It is really important, huh? Secure votes of 2/3 member of the assembly present and voting in UNGA. A minimum of this vote is required to become a non-permanent member. Okay. At the high table on India's non-permanent seat at UNSC. So India will be getting this particular seat, but India needs to strive for India is striving hard for the permanent seat at the UNSC, right? So something about UNSC we have discussed, one of the organs of the United Nations. So one of the principal organization we have done ICJ, we have done UNSC, right? So one of the organizations of United Nations is charged with the maintenance of the international peace and security powers, establishment of peacekeeping operations, the establishment of international sanctions and authorization of military action through United Security resolutions. So they pass in fact, this is the only body which has teeth in United Nations. It is the only body with authority to issue the binding resolutions to the member state. Okay. So member 15, and we have done non-permanent and permanent. So proposed reform. So basically it is said that UNSC reflects the world order after the World War II, reflects the global order after World War II. In fact, but the global order has changed, right? All the victors of the World War II got the seat in the UNSC, but currently the situation is very different. Countries like China, India are very dominant. People ask why United Kingdom is there in the United and UNSC. Why 3 members of the for example, US, Russia, China, UK and France. So they ask why 3 people from Europe, including Russia, why these 3 are there in the UNSC. There is no representation of Africa in it. Africa, as I told you, the future global hub for the growth, it is not there, right? And that is scary, right? So proposed reform category of the membership, question of the veto held by the non-permanent member, by the 5 permanent members, regional representation, size of enlarged council, its working method, a relation between UNSC and UNGA. So the proposed reform basically to increase the, first of all, permanent membership, veto power should be taken down, or there should be an effective veto. For example, it's not that only one country veto, something 2/3 or 3/4. If this much country veto, then only the veto will be there. So some sort of this reform is needed in UNSC. Also, the regional representation. What about Africa? What about Asia? Right? Enlarged council, the relationship between UNGA and UNSC needs to be strengthened. One of the reform India suggested that ICJ, many of the decisions on the judicial nature should be taken from the UNSC to the ICJ. So ICJ should be given more teeth because it has the experience of 15 member. It has a more regional representation, 15 member. Now two contesting group, G4 versus, you must have heard of this, G4 versus the Coffee Club. That is United for Consensus. Okay, G4 versus this Coffee Club or United for Consensus. So G4 countries are four: India, Brazil, Germany, and Japan. Okay, emphasize that they deserve at the place at the United Nations high table as permanent member, while the Coffee Club at the United for Consensus says that they oppose the G4, especially the individual country. For example, India is opposed by Pakistan. Okay, the Brazil is opposed by Argentina. Germany is opposed by Italy, and Japan is opposed by South Korea, apart from the other reasons. So their membership is opposed by the second group, right? So every now and then we call for reforms in UNSC, calls for renewed reform to gain permanent membership of UNSC. In fact, this is one of the primary objective of our foreign policy, one of the primary mission of foreign policy, to mobilize a support in the favor of having a more inclusive UNSC that represents all the regions, that represents all the voices, right? And they represent the present global order, not the past one. Should not be the relic of the past, right? Next is SCO summit, that is Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So currently summit happened in Bishkek, that is the capital of Kyrgyzstan. I told you, you need to remember the capitals of the country, like Kazakhstan, Astana, Kyrgyzstan, Bishkek. Okay. So it is also known as Shanghai Pact. So SCO is also known as Shanghai Pact, right? It's a Eurasian economic, political, economic, and military organization which was founded in 2001. Before, some history is there. Before 2001, the name was Shanghai 5. So 5 countries came together to form Shanghai 5. So what were those 5 countries? China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan. So these 5 countries came together and they formed Shanghai 5. After that, in 2001, Uzbekistan is also added, capital Tashkent. Uzbekistan added, and finally it became a SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So Shanghai Cooperation Organization, right? In 2017, in Astana Summit, India and Pakistan got the full membership. So now total membership is 8 members. Okay. So it was renamed to Shanghai Cooperation Organization after Uzbekistan joined the organization in 2001. Member state, if you see member state of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, so we've discussed that. Russia, capital Moscow. I'll just discuss the capital and the currency ruble. Kazakhstan, Kazakh is as the people, and the capital is Astana. Okay. Okay, capital is not mentioned. Okay. That is, next is Kyrgyzstan, Bishkek, Uzbekistan, Tashkent, Tajikistan, Dushanbe, right? So remember, Turkmenistan is not the part of the TANs of all the Central Asian countries. Turkmenistan is not the part of the SCO. If the question comes on the membership of SCO, definitely one option will be Turkmenistan. There will be option of Armenia. These are not there. Remember the difference between EEU and SCO. Which are the countries are common in that, right? The question can be asked on those lines, right? Next. So SCO's main goal is strengthening mutual trust and neighborliness among promoting their effective cooperation in politics, trade, economy, education, energy, transport, tourism, environmental protection, effort to maintain all the good things, right? Peace, security, stability in the region. Some people say that it is anti-US coalition or anti-NATO coalition. Anti-NATO. Some people say that is very anti-NATO. Presently, SCO comprises of 8 members, as I told you, 4 observer and 4 observer states. Observer states are not too much important, but just effusing. Afghanistan, Belarus, Iran, and Mongolia. 6 dialogue partners, not important, I'll say. So one structure is there, very important structure of SCO, that is RADS. Regional anti. In fact, one of the point of convergence of all the nation is the fight against the terrorism and the stability in the Afghanistan. Stability in the Afghanistan is really central to the success of the SCO in that particular region, right? So regional anti-terrorist structure RADS, headquartered in the Tashkent, Uzbekistan is a permanent organ of SCO which serves to promote cooperation of the member state against the three evils of the terrorism, extremism, and separatism. Okay. So remember, it is the headquarter is in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. Acha, headquarter of SCO is not Shanghai. Okay, remember that headquarter of SCO is not Shanghai. Headquarter of SCO is Beijing. Please do check. Okay, headquarter of SCO is Beijing. Okay. Next international organization we're going to read, it's OECD. Too many times mentioned, right? PISA and all the initiatives. So OECD, that is Organization of the or Economic and Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Okay, so it's an international economic organization which aims to promote the policies that will improve the economic and social well-being of the people around the world. It has 36 members, was founded in 1960 by 18 European nations plus United Nations and Canada. India is not a member of OECD. Just remember, it's an organization of the rich countries. India is not a member of OECD. Okay. One more thing, I expect the question can come on these lines. They want you to arrange the organization in terms of their chronology. So OECD is 1960, something like that. They can ask SCO, that is 2001. They can ask BRICS. They can ask G7. Just make organization, and then finally timeline can be asked on them. Okay. So we have done with the international organization. Now we'll come talk about some summits or initiatives, right? First is Hanoi Summit. Hanoi Summit was between North Korea and the United States. If the question will come directly that Hanoi Summit in 2019 was in news because of the landmark, the second summit of Mr. Trump and Mr. John King of Kim Jong Un of North Korea. I'm really sorry. Okay, Kim Jong Un. Okay, Kim Jong Un. Actually, his father and grandfather are also the leaders, and they have a similar name. Okay, so remember, his name is Kim Jong Un. So just to tell you the chronology, first summit happened in Singapore, in the Sentosa Island. Very good place to visit. Sentosa Island, the first summit happened. Okay, for us, for prelims perspective, the only relevance is the name of the place and the what, not what happened. In fact, they just talk and nothing substantial came out of it. Okay, so Mr. Trump and Mr. Kim Jong Un had meetings. So first meeting was in Singapore. The second meeting was in Hanoi. Hanoi is in Vietnam. Okay. Then the third summit happened when the Mr. Trump stood at the DMZ. Okay. So in the 2019 DMZ summit was one-day summit at the Korean demilitarized zone between the North Korean and Donald Trump, and also the South Korean President of Moon Jae-in was also there. Followed the 2019 G20 Osaka summit. So it happened around the the last day of June. In fact, that is why we are covering in the July month current affairs. Okay. So remember, first three meetings have happened. First meeting was in Singapore, second was in Hanoi, and third meeting was at the DMZ in the North Korea, South Korea demilitarized zone. I hope you have done in the world history that how both the countries are still at war, that DMZ is declared, right, along 38th parallel. Okay. Next is principle of non-refoulement. So really important. It's been news because of the migration, illegal migration, the tendency of xenophobia, and because of the Rohingya crisis, and that is why too much in the news. Okay. So first of all, see, non-refoulement. It's a practice of not forcing the refugee or the asylum seeker to return to the country in which they are liable to face subject to prosecution. For example, in your country, someone come from outside, right? Now you are telling them, then go away, go back to that particular country. From there, they have faced the prosecution. So the principle of non-refoulement says that you cannot say so. If someone is coming from facing a prosecution in the other country, you cannot say so. And this becomes really relevant in the context of the, I told you, citizenship, in the context of citizenship. Okay. So we need to keep that in mind. So principle of the customary international law prohibiting the expulsion, deportation, return, or extradition of an alien to his state of origin or to another state where there is a risk of that his life or freedom would be threatened by for the discriminatory reasons. Okay, for the discriminatory reasons. So the principle of non-refoulement is articulated. Just one second. Freedom, the principle of non-refoulement is articulated in Article 33 of 1951 Convention. Okay, and India is not party to the convention. Remember, India is not party to any refugee convention. Okay, we have not signed the convention, we have not ratified it, and that is there. Okay, but still we have been following the taking up the refugees, right? With Rohingya, there was a problem. Next is Yogyakarta principles. Yogyakarta principles. So the document about the human rights in the area, it's a document, Yogyakarta principles, the principles in the application of the international human rights law in relation to the sexual orientation and the gender identity. The same written here. Area of the sexual orientation and gender identity published as an outcome of the international meeting of the human rights group in the Yogyakarta in the Indonesia. So I'm telling you, right? Keep on telling you the places. Remember Ramsar, Montrex, because they can ask this easy question. Because these are too much in the news. They can ask you the location of it. They can ask the geographical perspective of it, not the political perspective, international perspective of it. Okay. So meeting of the international meeting of the human rights group in the Yogyakarta, that is Indonesia. So Yogyakarta location, you can see this is Sumatra, this is Java, and this is Bali. We have covered that, right? So Yogyakarta is in the Java. Why it was mentioned in the giving the 370 judgment on the 377 as well. Okay, so Justice Nariman embraced the Yogyakarta principle, which recognized the freedom of sexual orientation and the gender identity as the part of the human rights. So the human rights, part of the human rights is to freedom of the, to recognition of the freedom of the sexual orientation and the gender identity, right? So quickly we move to the last section of our discussion, that is the bilateral relationships. Bilateral or multilateral partnerships of India, where specifically India is involved. First is India UN Development Partnership Fund. So United Nations General Secretary Antonio Guterres has praised India UN Development Partnership Fund for championing the greater prosperity for all while contributing to the South-South cooperation. Okay, so what is South-South cooperation? So basically, we'll cover in detail. South-South cooperation is basically cooperation among the countries of the global South. See, easily, the Brazil, South Africa, India, Indonesia, global South. Which countries are third world countries or developing countries, right? So, and the parent fund is, this particular partnership fund is dedicated facility within the United Nations Fund for the South-South cooperation. So United Nations itself has a fund, and this particular India UN Development Partnership Fund is within this particular fund. Okay, established in 2017, supported and led by the government of India, managed by the UNOSSC. Okay, implemented in collaboration with the United Nations system. Government of India has committed USD $150 million over the next decade to support projects in the alignment of the 2030 agenda. Which agenda? Sustainable Development Goal. Mandate, the fund support, what will be there? The fund support, not the imposed one, but Southern owned, Southern led, demand driven, transformation, sustainable development project. Too many keywords, right? So fund supports Southern owned and led, demand driven, transformational, sustainable development projects across the developing world while focusing on the least developed countries and the small island developing states. Okay, small island developing states. So news about India UN Developmental Partnership Fund. General Assembly President emphasized the importance of the South-South cooperation, elevating poverty and the hunger. Okay. Next is India-Russia Strategic Economic Dialogue. Okay, strategic economic dialogue. It was established following the bilateral memorandum signed between Niti Aayog and the Ministry of Economic Development of Russia. Niti Aayog and that particular thing of Russia. During the 19th edition of annual India-Russia bilateral summit in the New Delhi, second summit was held in the New Delhi. It started in the federation. It started established in the 19th edition when the proper India Russia have met bilaterally. They meet every year. We'd also discuss the Far East Indian Prime Minister visit to the Russia this year, last year, sorry. And the second edition of this particular strategic economic dialogue happened in the New Delhi. Right. The second India Russia strategic economic dialogue held in the New Delhi, 10th July news. Okay. Embark upon the fruits of development devolved to the grassroots enforced by the forward-looking union budget. All these things. Next is because the first budget came of Narendra Modi's new government and that time only. Next is India. Now you will have very boring. I'll tell you very right start from the start. Some India-UK relationships, some India-UK different initiatives. But I'll prefer you just have it once, just read it once, revise once, and that's all. If the question comes on any ground, I also tell you where the question can come, and that's what you need to remember. But I cannot leave things out because no exclusion error, right? First is India-UK Education and Research Initiative, UKERI. Mobility Program Study in India. So it's a bilateral pilot program which supports the UK universities to collaborate with Indian partner to send UK students to India as a part of their studies. So UK students will come to India, right? It provides flexibility grants to the UK higher education institutions and their Indian partner institutions to design and deliver academically rigorous short-term mobility opportunities in India for undergraduate students from the UK higher education institutions. Too much, right? So what it is in the basic? So basically, flexibility in the UK and India, so that students from both the places can go to the each place. That's it. Next, India-UK Joint Economic and Trade Committee. So from the name itself, it's very clear. JETCO. So JETCO 2005 to develop the strategic economic relationship between this India-UK towards a new and dynamic partnership. So JETCO meeting 13th happened, agreed to set 3 new bilateral working groups to tackle the barriers to the trade in the specific sectors. Okay, so 3 new business-led working groups will be run by the UK Business Council alongside CII of India and FICCI of India. CII and FICCI. Okay, these things I have to cover. That is why we are covering. You can see 18 July. So joint statement of the 13th meeting of India-UK is India-UK Economic and Trade Committee. Next is India-UK Partnership Fund, India-UK Financial Partnership Fund. Okay, so this fund is basically, it will strengthen the link between the financial service industry of both the countries and deepen cooperation between London and Mumbai, two of the world's leading financial centers. Remember, the question can come that India-UK financial partnership, it is with respect to some startup in intervention startup or something like that. Just remember, it is with respect to the financial services. London and Mumbai, the two financial centers. Okay. Next is UK-India Tech Partnership. So it will pair the business universities and the others from different regions in the UK with the states in India. Right? Not important. I'll tell you. Next, this one is important. Newton Bhabha Fund. So aims to bring together Newton from India or from London and Bhabha from India. So aims to bring together UK and Indian scientific research and innovation sectors to find out joint solutions to the challenges facing India in the economic development and the social welfare. So aims to bring together the UK and the Indian scientific research and innovation sectors to find joint solutions to the challenges facing India in the economic development and the social welfare. We've done in the last governance, right? Society relevant, globally significant, right? Nationally nationally on the national agenda. That's research. In the governance lecture, we've done that, right? So Newton Fund itself built research and the innovation partnership with 18 partner countries. So UK has this Newton Fund, right? And Newton Bhabha is the partnership with the India. So Newton Fund itself is working with a different, like it's saying 18 partner countries to support economic development and the social welfare. So Bhabha Fund, Newton Bhabha Fund will be working for the Indian context, Indian chapter. Next, India-UK CEOs Forum. So the objective of the forum is to making the recommendation to the government for increasing the level of bilateral trade and investment between the two countries. From the name itself, it is saying. So the CEO from the big companies of India and the UK will meet. Next, India-UK economic and financial dialogue. The objective is to strengthen the financial and the economic relationship between India and UK in the light of each other economic policy agenda. Not important at all. But we have to include it. Okay, if the question comes, then we have to claim it, right? But I'm telling you that's not important at all. Because from the name itself, it's very clear. You can make a common sense. You should avoid the facts which are not relevant. Let me tell you. But this is a prelims fact. That is why I have not kept much information here. But this much information is, and that's heading you should know. That something like this is there. Next, UK-India Business Council. So member-based non-profit body set up to promote India-UK economic partnership. Plays role of a secretariat for JETCO talks. Now this one becomes relevant. And JETCO also becomes relevant. Whenever there is a convergence between two things, then it becomes relevant. Okay. So plays an important role of secretariat for the JETCO talks and provide a forum for the UK companies to enhance their links and develop new partnerships with the Indian businesses. right? So UK India Business Council supporting business success. The UK India Business Council support UK business with the insights, network, policy, and need to succeed in the India. Right? UK business succeeding in India. Next is Access India program, and this one is relevant because we have an Accessible India campaign, right? Okay, Sugam Bharat Abhiyan. So from the name itself, you won't be able to guess that it's a UK based initiative. So High Commissioner of India in London initiated Access India program in 2017 for facilitating investment by US small and medium enterprise in India. So investment by these SMEs into India. So primary focus of AIP Access India program is on the companies interested in investing in India. That is those intending to set up manufacturing facility as a part of the Make in India initiative. Okay, as a part of the Make in India initiative. Next is this one is important, UK India collaboration on the Varanasi smart city. Okay, so technical assistance for the redevelopment of the Varanasi railway station under the Varanasi smart city plan will be extended by UK, and also India and UK are participating for the development of the Varanasi as a small city. Actually, that's a current affair 3 to 4 years back, but the question can be asked. You also need to know where France is collaborating, where Japan is collaborating, right? So one city you must know. So smart city plan of Varanasi itself, right? Varanasi. Challenges, not too much important from the prelims perspective. Road infrastructure, in fact traffic congestion is one of the biggest problem of Varanasi. Varanasi has come out to be the largest air pollution emitter, most polluted country, air polluted country in the India. Why? Because one of the great reason is a traffic congestion. Roads are really small and the tourist arrival is too much, tourist input is too much. Okay, now, one of the last topics, Bangladesh, India, Myanmar Economic Corridor, BCIM. Okay, Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar. So, initiative conceptualized for significant gains through sub-regional economic cooperation within the BCIM. Okay, it's a multimodal corridor, will be the first expressway between India and China will pass through Myanmar and the Bangladesh. So, from the itself you can see from India, Kolkata to pass through Bangladesh, then India northeast, again then Myanmar and then to China coming. Okay, so just need to know the areas, the first point and the last point, Kolkata to coming. Okay, so one question is there, is it a part of BRI or not? So answer is no. Earlier it was listed as a part of BRI itself, I'm telling you, but now they have said in the April, you can see 2019 news, BCIM no longer under the BRI umbrella, especially post India's opposition to Belt and Road Organization over the point that it impinges upon the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of India, right? And because of that, India has stayed out of BRI. Apart from that, more reasons, that is opaque level of financing by China. So what will be the, instead of South Asia is covered by 3 major undertakings under the BRI. So BCIM is not part of it. However, there are 3 projects which are part of it. First is China Myanmar Economic Corridor. We'll cover that in the next coming days. Second is Nepal China Trans Himalayan Multi-Dimensional Connectivity Network. We have already covered that in the very first October month. And then CPEC. So hai CPEC is the very flagship program of China. CPEC, right? CPEC, CMEC, and this China Nepal Trans Himalayan Multi-Dimensional Connectivity Network. So finally coming to CPEC, CPEC is from Kashgar, China. The mains, they have asked question twice in fact on CPEC. The problem faced by CPEC, whether India should join CPEC or not and all this. So from Kashgar, China to Gwadar Port, Pakistan, part of OROB, BRI of China, Saudi Arabia has been recently invited to join CPEC. So that Pakistan is trying for CPEC plus, okay, by including Saudi and these things into it. Currently, we're reading about CPEC. CPEC is strongly opposed by India. It passes through POK, Pakistan Occupied Kashmir. This is the area. Actually, we have discussed somewhere about the, remember Chemial festival, art and culture of the last month, June month. So, this part is Gilgit-Baltistan, right? And this is the Azad Kashmir. So, it passes through Kashgar. This passes through this region. And that is where the problem of India lies. India says that this part from this, and this is why. And you have not consulted us. This is the whole Jammu Kashmir is a part of the India, right? they have said that you should have considered, and that's where the territorial integrity and sovereignty issues lies, right? I'll again suggest you to read each and every current affair, all the videos, all the PDFs, do revise, then only you'll get the maximum benefit of the classes, okay? So this is our classes done. So we have done country specific news, international institutions, summit initiative, and finally the bilateral ones. As compared to the June class, relatively small class, we still 1 hour, more around 1 hour class is there, okay? So in the next class, we will meet you for the economy and then polity and then finally the ecology, right? And we'll try to finish July as soon as possible. Then we'll be covering August and September, and those videos will be available by the end of the March itself. By the end of the March month, we'll cover till September, and from in the April month, we'll cover the remaining, that is December, January, February, and March. Okay, so don't be afraid. We'll be able to cover each and everything. Just focus on your studies. Focus on the complementary static part. If you find the impetus series relevant, do share with your friends, and also take the full advantage of the impetus series, because the question can come directly from the areas that I'll be covering. Okay, thank you. See you in the next class.